Hello, my name is Ryan Nelson. I'm doing these daily devotionals. I'm doing most of this for my youth, but I'm telling you, everybody should get on every day if you have a chance. Listen, I'm going to try and keep them short, but today I'm going to talk a little bit about the format that I'm going to do these devotionals. I didn't really talk about that yesterday when I shot the first one. I read through every day and I study a verse. I study whole chapters and I read all day long, but I try to make it a point to spend about 30 minutes on one single verse. Reason being is I believe context is very important, but I also believe that every single word in the Bible is there for a reason. There is not one piece of filler. God knew what he was writing when he penned it. And so for us, we have to respect every verse, every line. And what's neat about that is you will know what we're going to be talking about ahead of time. I started in Matthew 5:16 because that's just where I was personally. And I thought, well, I'll just take you along with me on this journey. Sometimes it can become a little heady. Sometimes it can be really deep and maybe hard to understand, but that's okay. That's why you can leave comments. You can send us questions, and you'll be getting access to a site soon where you can do all of that. But that's just the format. So today, what am I going to be going over? I'm going to go over Matthew 5:17. And the verse is this: "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." So what was he talking about when he said that? He said, I came to fulfill them, fulfill the law. Well, first we have to understand what the law is. And the law is a foundational code. It is a code God created, and it had moral law. It had the Ten Commandments that you may know. And it also had ceremonial laws. It had conduct, kind of like a dress codes, the way you should talk to people, the way you should marry. It had all of these different codes, laws, and commands by God. Now, Jesus came to fulfill the law. And how he did that was by following and living each and every one of what I'm going to tell you is called the judicial law. We're going to come back to that here in a minute. So he obeyed every command. But more important than Jesus fulfilling the Old Testament, this is where I think sometimes I lose people. He didn't just fulfill the law and follow all the rules and do it perfectly. He was actually the fulfillment of the whole Old Testament. There's a reason why he split time. There's a reason why we have a calendar that has BC, before Christ, after Christ. He fulfilled, complete the whole Old Testament code of conduct that we could not do ourselves. Not only did he teach it, but he was fully the completion of it. He was more than just human righteousness. What he came and did, we cannot do on our own. See, there are some belief systems out there that believe that we can attain and be as good as Christ was himself. And that is not true, because what Christ came and did, he fulfilled human righteousness, but he did it through his divine righteousness. We cannot do it. That's why he is 100% God, 100% man. We are just human. We are just men and women. He was 100% God, and he had that divine righteousness. He is the Word. He was the one at the beginning of time. We were spoke into existence through the Word, and Christ is the Word. Everything was created through him and for him. So he comes as a man to fulfill our righteousness completely out of love. I want you guys to know this: for God so loved the world. It was completely out of love. Jesus. He was the image of the invisible God. He was an exact reflection. In John 5, he says, "If you see the Father, as though you're looking at me." Jesus was God in human flesh. I want you to understand that, to understand this verse. Jesus, He highly regarded this same law that he was coming to fulfill. There is a misconception that Jesus was like, I don't care about the law. I'm above the law. As God, of course, he's above law because he's the lawmaker. He's the author of the law. But he wasn't above following the law. It would have been against his nature. It would have been against who he was. But on top of that, as being a human in human flesh, to justify us, he had to fulfill it for us. So that's what God did. Now, something you have to understand is he bucked the system when it came to ceremonial and traditional law. And the reason for that is because Israel was a nation that, just like we have a holy God, our God is holy, set apart from humanity until Christ, but he's completely set apart. In every characteristic, he thinks different than us. He's better than us in every single way. So, he was going to come. He is going to show himself. God, the invisible God, is going to show himself through a nation, and that nation is Israel. So Israel, to be seen as this nation where God's coming out of, they had to be set apart from the rest of the world. And so God gave them codes of conduct so that you would know an Israelite, you would know a Jew just by looking at them, how they would be totally different than the rest of the world. They did this through their diet laws. They did it through their ceremonial laws. They did it through their dress. They couldn't mix materials. They couldn't have like a silk shirt with cotton pants. Everything had to be one material. There was all these different traditions that Jesus would say, don't worry about those. Those aren't laws we have to follow. And you think, well, why is that? Why would Jesus say these laws we need to follow, the judicial laws? Why did Jesus have to follow the judicial laws, all these traditions? Because all of that was just conduct to set them apart so they would be a holy nation. That's important to know, because Jesus did not come and die on a cross for simply a holy nation. He did it for his people, the holy people, the children of God, which God says is for the whole world, not for one nation. So the dietary laws and being set apart by looking completely different and eating different and acting different, having ceremonies that are different, having a sacrificial system that is different, those things Jesus was not concerned about, because he didn't come for just Israel. He wasn't just their Messiah. He came for the whole world. He restored humanity at his crucifixion. When Jesus died and rose from the dead, he restored humanity. He actually complete the Old Testament. And we see this very clear because Israel committed the ultimate apostate by rejecting God. He rejected the Messiah. And so what God has done is he's ushered in a new nation, a brand new nation, a nation and an age of the church. It's redemption for both the Jews and the Gentiles. It's redemption for every race, gender, creed, every sinner who follows God. Every sinner. It doesn't matter if they've killed people, if they've lied to people, if they were big thieves, if they come and follow Christ, they are one of God's chosen people. And he will turn their heart around. So it doesn't matter where you are in life. You can be forgiven and carry the robe of righteousness because Jesus fulfilled that Old Testament. So, the people of God, I want to make this clear, the people of God are chosen by God, and those people are his church. The body, not a local corporate church, not Emmanuel Baptist Church, not the United Methodist Church, not all of these different churches. He came to build his church, the whole body. I want you to know that. Sometimes we can infight over small things that can separate and divide his body, and he does not want that. He wants us to be one body. But I also wanted to give you some application, because I kind of read this stuff and I think, well, this is what I'm going to study today, so I kind of understand. But here's some application. How can this apply to you? And I wrote it down. We cannot duplicate the perfections of Christ. We cannot do it. It is impossible. And I'm telling you, if you look in your heart, you cannot deny that truth. You know you're a sinner, and it's okay to admit and know that. We're not perfect. We are not Christ. But what we do as Christians is we strive to be the light of Christ, just like the verse before that. So we strive to be that light of Christ so people can see Christ in us. Now, here's what I want you to really grasp. If you get nothing out of this video today, because it's a little heady, this is the one thing I want you to take away. Christ alone is what saved us. He alone saves us, not being perfect. Because we can't be perfect. We don't have that divine righteousness like Jesus. We cannot be perfect. But what Jesus did was he made us perfect. He perfected us through his perfection by fulfilling the law and being the completion of the Old Testament. Thank you for your time. And today, look at yourself and think to yourself, in your failures, remember the truth that in your failures, he's the one who came and perfected righteousness. You can't do it. And once you realize, I can't do it perfectly, I never will, the burden that you carry on your back can be cut and let go. And then you can strive to love and be like Christ every day and know that in mistakes, in all of your mistakes, he is the one who actually perfected you because you can't do it yourself. So what did the verse say? I have not come to abolish them, referring to the law, but to fulfill them. And that's what he did for us. Thank you for your time.